Thank you for coming, and welcome to the panel on 5G, sponsored by Center for Safer Wireless. The Center for Safer Wireless is a nonprofit organization founded 8 years ago to educate the public and government, and particularly families, about the science showing the wireless radiation may be harmful. And since that time, countless studies have continued to be done confirming that wireless radiation does impact the cellular functioning of our bodies. Desiree Jaworski, our executive director, was not able to come today because of an unexpected family matter, so I'll be taking her place as moderator. I'm Nancy Wallace, a member of the Center for Safer Wireless Executive Board. I've been on the board for 4 years and have talked to and presented our position on wireless radiation to both government officials and environmental groups. And in the last election, I ran as the Green Party candidate for the Maryland House, actually for United States Congress. We're going to show a 6-minute video to start, and then we will move to our 4 panelists. The 6-minute video will explain exactly what 5G is. After this, our panelists will speak, and then we'll have a question and answer period.
Good, thank you.
Every new generation of wireless networks delivers faster speeds and more functionality to our smartphones. 1G brought us the very first cell phones, 2G let us text for the first time, 3G brought us online, and 4G delivered the speeds that we enjoy today. But as more users come online, 4G networks have just about reached the limit of what they're capable of at a time when users want even more data for their smartphones and devices. Now we're headed toward 5G, the next generation of wireless. It will be able to handle 1,000 times more traffic than today's networks, and it'll be up to 10 times faster than 4G LTE. Just imagine downloading an HD movie in under a second, and then let your imagination run wild. 5G will be the foundation for virtual reality, autonomous driving, the Internet of Things, and stuff we can't even yet imagine. But what exactly is a 5G network? The truth is, experts can't tell us what 5G actually is, because they don't even know yet. But right now, there are 5 brand new technologies emerging as the foundation of 5G. Millimeter waves, small cells, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. First up, technology number 1, millimeter waves. Your smartphone and other electronic devices in your home use very specific frequencies on the radio frequency spectrum, typically those under 6 gigahertz. But these frequencies are starting to get more crowded. Carriers can only squeeze so many bits of data on the same amount of radio frequency spectrum. As more devices come online, we're going to start to see slower service and more dropped connections. The solution is to open up some new real estate. So researchers are experimenting with broadcasting on shorter millimeter waves, those that fall between 30 and 300 gigahertz. This section of spectrum has never been used before for mobile devices, and opening it up means more bandwidth for everyone. But there is a catch. Millimeter waves can't travel well through buildings or other obstacles, and they tend to be absorbed by plants and rain. To get around this problem, we'll need technology number 2, small cell networks. Today's wireless networks rely on large, high-powered cell towers to broadcast their signals over long distances. But remember, higher frequency millimeter waves have a harder time traveling through obstacles, which means if you move behind one, you lose your signal. Small cell networks would solve that problem, using thousands of low-power mini base stations. These base stations would be much closer together than traditional towers, forming a sort of relay team to transmit signals around obstacles. This would be especially useful in cities. As the user moved behind an obstacle, his smartphone would automatically switch to a new base station in better range of his device, allowing him to keep his connection. Next up, technology number 3, massive MIMO. MIMO stands for multiple input, multiple output. Today's 4G base stations have about a dozen ports for antennas that handle all cellular traffic, but massive MIMO base stations can support about 100 ports. This could increase the capacity of today's networks by a factor of 22 or more. Of course, massive MIMO comes with its own complications. Today's cellular antennas broadcast information in every direction at once, and all of those crossing signals could cause serious interference. Which brings us to technology number 4, beamforming. Beamforming is like a traffic signaling system for cellular signals. Instead of broadcasting in every direction, it would allow a base station to send a focused stream of data to a specific user. This precision prevents interference and it's way more efficient. That means stations could handle more incoming and outgoing data streams at once. Here's how it works. Say you're in a cluster of buildings and you're trying to make a phone call. Your signal is ricocheting off of surrounding buildings and crisscrossing with other signals from users in the area. A massive MIMO base station receives all of these signals and keeps track of the timing and the direction of their arrival. It then uses signal processing algorithms to triangulate exactly where each signal is coming from and plots the best transmission route back through the air to each phone. Sometimes it'll even bounce individual packets of data in different directions, off of buildings or other objects to keep signals from interfering with each other. The result is a coherent data stream sent only to you. Which brings us to technology number 5, full duplex. If you've ever used a walkie-talkie, you know that in order to communicate, you have to take turns talking and listening. That's kind of a drag. Today's cellular base stations have that exact same holdup. A basic antenna can only do one job at a time, either transmit or receive. This is because of a principle called reciprocity, which is the tendency for radio waves to travel both forward and backward along the same frequency. To understand this, it helps to think of a wave like a train loaded up with data. The frequency it's traveling on is like the train track. And if there's a second train trying to go in the opposite direction on the same track, you're going to get some interference. Up until now, the solution has been to have the trains take turns or to put all the trains on different tracks or frequencies. But you can make things a lot more efficient by working around reciprocity. Researchers have used silicon transistors to create high-speed switches that halt the backward roll of these waves. It's kind of like a signaling system that can momentarily reroute two trains so that they can get past each other. That means there's a lot more getting done on each track a whole lot faster. We're still working out many of the kinks with millimeter waves, small cell networks, massive MIMO, beamforming, and full duplex. In fact, all of 5G is still a work in progress. It will likely include other new technologies too, and making all of these systems work together will be a whole other challenge. But if experts can figure that out, ultra-fast 5G service could arrive in the next 5 years.
So now that we know what we're going to be learning about today, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Theodoros Corrado is the Director of Public Affairs and Educational Resources at the Environmental Health Trust, a scientific think tank that carries out research on environmental health risks and works directly with communities as well as policymakers to understand and mitigate these risks. She coordinates programs with scientists and research institutions internationally and develops policy updates, educational materials, and resources. She has co-founded several organizations, both locally and nationally, that address environmental health and safety concerns. She's also a practicing clinical social worker. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here. I just wanted to point out at the end of that piece, they talked about in the next 5 years, and yet no proof of safety. So what I wanted to do, this last video talked about using different frequencies, higher frequencies that we haven't used in communications before. And what I wanted to share with you is some research that is the best available new science on these higher frequencies, specifically sub-millimeter and millimeter waves. Many people say that wireless is everywhere, and that, what can we do? Wireless is everywhere. But the genie is not out of the bottle. The genie is perhaps about to be out of the bottle from watching that video, and I think that's why it's so important that we're educating ourselves on this now. So I put together a short video, which I wanted to show and then briefly talk about, and then talk more at the Q&A. The short clip has, if you go online, you can watch all sorts of videos of engineers and people in industry talking about new technology, much like this, and how they're going to create 5G. What is it going to be? Because we don't know. We know that it will be a variety of different frequencies and modulations, none of which have been tested for long-term safety together, which is what we're talking about, as you can tell from that video. So I have a short clip just talking where one presenter is talking about people being in the way and what to do, like how would that impact the functioning of millimeter waves. The second clip is from a recent scientific conference in Israel at the Israel Institute for Advanced Study, where Paul Ben Ashai from the Department of Physics at Ariel University talks about his research, the lab of Yuri Feldman, and they found that these higher frequencies, these sub-millimeter and millimeter waves, interact with human skin, specifically our sweat glands, so that our sweat glands become helical antennas. And you can go online and watch the full video if you're interested, where he presents this. This is quite proven about this interaction, and what will that mean for human health. So the other embedded in there is a video from the Department of Defense, because Paul Ben Ashai talks about how his understanding and his research is correlated with studies from the Department of Defense for use in their active denial system, which is a weapon, well, they call it a crowd control technology. And I thought that it was quite interesting and had a good visual in terms of understanding the way that this radiation can interact with our bodies. Now, of course, it's a much higher level that these crowd control weaponry uses, but we don't know, actually. Well, we certainly have some ideas of and indications of what we're going to see if we're exposed continuously to low levels of these type of frequencies. And so we could play this short.
Blocked by buildings. You're in Manhattan, there's a lot of buildings around. Well, what about this? Boy, people can block the signal too. Depending on which frequency you're operating at, we tend to either scatter or absorb a ton of millimeter wave frequency. Actually, even depends on clothing. I mean, wearing a wool sweater is hugely different than a synthetic shirt. But anyways, basically people block the signal. So if you have like low transmitter receiver, people walking around, your signal will be blocked like all the time. By the way, we block the signal ourselves. I could be communicating with the space station right here. I turn my back to talk to someone over here. I just block my best propagation path. My SNR goes down 25 dB. I mean, I get nothing now. So we block our own signal. And then it goes to the extreme that, in fact, we can even block the antenna elements on our hand. Everyone remembers this Apple antenna gate. But this is a big issue at millimeter wave, because you could, even though you have an array of antennas, that array is not very big. You could very easily just happen to cover it with your thumb.
This is a network that's being rolled out all over the country that will involve thousands of antennas. I love my devices as much as anyone else, but I don't want to put the health of my grandchildren at risk. I don't want to put them in harm's way. And we now know that the skin, our largest organ, does respond to 5G. And in fact, we have in our sweat ducts, they can act as antennas that can receive signals. Now, this has not been tested for safety. The fact that it can interact with our sweat ducts may have much more profound meaning for our overall health and well-being. The idea that we're going to saturate this country with a network that has never been tested is appalling.
This is an OCT image of living human skin. An OCT is optical coherence tomography. Basically, it's a method of imaging the skin as skin. And what you're looking at is the upper layer of skin here, the stratum corneum. You're seeing basically this black area is already hypodermis dermis. You're seeing from here to here, the living epidermis as it goes up, the boundary really, which many people call the dermis to epidermis, until the stratum corneum here. And those coils that you see quite clearly there are your sweat ducts. We have 2 to 5 million of these on our skin. We have a massive concentration on our hands of 600 per square centimeter. We have a much smaller concentration, 100 per square centimeter on our back or on our chest. On our foreheads and heads, the back of our heads, we have a concentration of 300 per square centimeter. We are littered with them, and we are sweating continuously. In fact, we lose 15% of our moisture all the time through these sweat ducts, even on the coldest of days. Now, pay attention to these dimensions. 0.3 millimeter, if I put it into nice, easy speak. That's what it is. This is relevant when we start looking at frequencies from 60 gig above 300 gig, or if I talk industry speak, 5G. So now we are actually in a situation where we are going to invest millions of dollars, build fantastic infrastructure, and zap ourselves with wavelengths which will interact with the geometrical structure of our skin in some way. So pretty clearly, there is a mechanism, it's quite nice, that at least in that particular frequency level, the skin is absorbing, and the main, if you like, motivator of that absorption would be the sweat duct. And this is all before we'd even realized that these industry standards were going to come out for 5G. Now, we're not the only people. There's been a few other groups as well who've also looked at it. In fact, using Ezra's software, Gal Shafferstein also came to the same conclusion, and he went one stage further than us. He actually looked at SAR rates as well. Now, he did this because the American Army had commissioned him to explain why their 94 gigahertz cloud dispersal gun made people run away when the beam touched them. This beam is 2 gigawatts in strength. It's 2 meters across. And if you are unlucky enough to be standing there when it hits you, you feel like your body's on fire. You will run away and you will find out that you're perfectly okay, more or less. So they commissioned him to find out why, and he had an amazing discovery when he looked at the SAR rates, and he found that preferentially the SAR rate was going very high inside the sweat duct as compared to the surrounding tissue.
These service personnel playing the role of an unruly mob at Georgia's Moody Air Force Base are about to fall prey to an invisible ray. The hulking panel atop this Humvee is part of what the U.S. military calls the Active Denial System, or ADS. It's designed to incapacitate enemy combatants with an unnerving, non-lethal sensation of intense heat. Watch as the ray silently strikes and scatters the crowd.
The active denial system has 3 great characteristics. First of all, it's safe. Second, it's effective. And third, it has a tremendous range compared to the other non-lethal weapons that today's warfighter has.
This is the heart of this 100 kilowatt transmitter. This is the gyrotron. 200 kilowatts of electricity is fed in, and 100 kilowatts of radio frequency comes out. That millimeter wave energy comes out an aperture underneath the main reflector, hits the subreflector, which illuminates that main reflector and sends a roughly antenna-sized beam downrange. Those holes that you see in the antenna are for the cameras and other visual equipment that the operator uses so that he knows exactly where that beam is going.
It's operated by a joystick. The operator looks into the console, sees exactly what that antenna is aimed at, moves the joystick left, antenna slews to the left, same way to the right. Then when there's an individual who's identified as a troublemaker, he has a cursor. He can put that cursor on that individual, pull the trigger that's on the joystick, and the energy is sent downrange at the speed of light.
The electromagnetic radiation released by the active denial system is similar to the microwaves in your microwave oven, in that it causes the water molecules in the target to become excited and heat up. But that's where the similarity ends. The ADS is designed to heat only the very surface of the skin. It does this by outputting only the carefully chosen radio wave frequency of 95 gigahertz. Even though it can easily penetrate clothing, the ADS generates a much shorter and safer wavelength of radio waves than those used in microwave ovens.
The active denial system millimeter wave directed energy beam reaches 1/64th of an inch into human skin. So that is the outermost layer of the skin, roughly equivalent to about 3 sheets of notebook paper. It is essentially affecting the pain nerves in the outermost layer of the skin, heating them up and causing an immediate repel effect.
Even these stoic servicemen, aware of what's about to happen,
Engage.
can't help but flinch when they feel the heat.
This is the first time I've experienced the beam from the active denial system, and it feels like an intense warmth feeling, kind of similar to opening a very hot oven door, and it's a compelling feeling that you want to get out of the way of this beam. If you were not expecting this, it would definitely shock you and make you want to move.
So there's already some evidence that there's a physical influence could be on us from him. There's been a few other groups as well. Our results were confirmed by a group in Queen Mary University, written by Robert Dunham. So definitely the sweat duct is where the absorption is happening. This actually tallies quite nicely with what Gary Schafferstein had found way back in 2011 as well. So it's happening there. And this is ignored by industry. When they're making the 5G recommendations, nobody's looking at this, nobody's even really aware of this. Well, that's the panel that's making the specification for 5G. What worries me is that is basically an industry panel, and it is not independent. And as you can see, they are making quite good progress, and within 2 years, you said, Darius? 2 years, we should have this everywhere, all over us. And this is not being looked at. Nobody's really considering what health effects could be because of that mechanism, which we've proven to exist. It's there. Nobody's really considering what it can be. And with that rather frightening message, I will leave you.
So I wanted to say that there's a conference, there's a yearly conference, it's the BioEM 217 conference of experts in bioelectromagnetics, and they are going to be presenting this research and already have at international conferences on a plenary that's entitled Current Knowledge of Biological Effects Above 6 gigahertz. There's also going to be a Japanese scientist who's going to talk about ocular injuries, eye injuries from this type of radiation, because you imagine if it's going through the skin but just ever so slightly, what does it do to the eyes? And there's actually a website that the U.S. The U.S. Defense Department has about these frequencies and about how safe it is. And if you take the time to go on it and click on these reports and say, well, why are they saying it's safe? There has not been the kind of long-term testing that we would expect for a product or something that the population is going to be exposed to, especially children. I wanted to just point out a few things. One was that Darius Lazinski, I could have made a really long video, but decided to just keep it short. He's a scientist who is at this talk in Israel and also at a talk in Iceland, which I would invite everyone to see, which is about screens and children and wireless in schools. But they talked about 5G as well there. And he said that what they're doing now in developing the standards for 5G in terms of how much are we allowed to be exposed to, that the skin, our largest organ, is likely going to be classified as an extremity. And that's very concerning because, like with cell phones, there are extremities and then there's the head and the torso. And the government limits or regulatory limits on cell phones allow more radiation into extremities, like your hands and your feet, and your ear actually, than other parts of your body. And if our skin is classified as an extremity, then that can allow much more exposure. And that way, they can use higher power without really taking a look at what this is going to mean to our sweat glands. Because if we're repeatedly exposed to a low amount of something that is very high absorption into a very specific part of our body, what will that mean to our nerve receptors over time? We saw what it does when it's high, one-shot deal, two-shot deal, but what would that mean for continuous exposure, which is of course the same issue that we have with cell phones and laptops and all these wireless devices which are everywhere. So that was what I wanted to share. And also, is everyone aware of the National Toxicology Program results? So maybe I'll just mention that at this conference as well, the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences presentation was presented. The National Toxicology Program released in May the results of a many-year study on long-term exposure to animals of radio frequency levels which were set to mimic a lifetime of exposure to a cell phone. Whose cell phone is this? Can I knock it up? To a cell phone. Should put it down. And found increased cancers in the brain and in the nerve of the heart in male rats, indicating this is a problem. Nothing should have been found. Now, in addition, they found DNA damage in the frontal lobe of both rats and mice, and in other tissues in the animals. And as I understand it, there's a report that's been put online, and there'll be a new report coming out where they update it with the DNA data showing that. And so you can go online and just look up National Toxicology Program. Especially at the Environmental Health Trust site, we have a whole section dedicated to that. Or go to the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences to learn more about this study. And that should have triggered an immediate action by our federal agencies. That is what would have made sense, but we're not seeing that. So thank you so much for being here, and I'll answer questions at the Q&A. Thank you.
And she highlights why we're here today, which is to educate ourselves and start to take action in terms of our own personal lives and our communities. So our next panelist is Kate Keel. She's the founder and current director of Maryland Smart Meter Awareness. She was instrumental in helping to get an opt-out provision in Maryland, thank you very much for me, for wireless smart meters. She maintains communication with similar organizations nationwide and initiates various campaigns to educate Maryland residents about the smart meter problem. With 5G and the Internet of Things on the horizon, she researched and created the website www.whatis5g.info and a Facebook page to raise awareness so people would be better equipped to respond. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. I have to say, I didn't quite prepare because I didn't know how many people would be here, and I didn't kind of know what everybody would be most interested in. I mean, I did prepare, but I didn't, there's so much to cover that I kind of was having a hard time focusing myself. So I will just speak as if I'm talking to you personally, and if you have any questions, even though it's not question or answer, please do feel free to ask. When I saw that 5G and the Internet of Things was on the horizon, I just couldn't hold myself back. Because as bad as smart meters are, this is going to be so monumentally more devastating to us. The densification with infrastructure in our communities is going to be overwhelming. These are called small cells, 5G. They are actually not so small. They're advertised by the industry and by our political leaders as being the size of a pizza box. But a gentleman in California actually took them up on that and went to Domino's Pizza. And, they said a small pizza box. And he got a small pizza box and measured it, took the measurements of that compared to the small cells, And the small cells are actually 30 times the size of a large pizza box and 60 times the large size, the volume of a small pizza box. In addition, every small cell has a power supply to it. That can be, allowably, up to 33 cubic feet, which is the size of a refrigerator. And they can have other things attached to these also, switches and so forth, which can be above and beyond that. The frequencies are a mixture. Right now, what they're putting up are actually 4G small cells because they don't know what 5G is going to be, but they're thinking that 5G will be a mixture of millimeter wave, of waves that are about this long to half-inch waves, which are the millimeter wave frequencies. So it's going to be a whole mixture of frequencies. There will be a small cell on virtually every lamppost and hanging also from wires strewn between lampposts. They're also allowed to put them there. They will be, the telecom industry is pushing this more aggressively than I think I've ever seen anything in my entire life. They are pushing legislation on the federal level. Currently, there's a bill, S-19 and S-88, two bills, that will streamline the deployment of these 5G cells. Let me go back and state the reason that they are pushing so hard politically is because they want to deploy these as fast as they can because it's cheaper that way. Two, they want to get them out before people wake up and don't want them and realize what's happening, because as of now, most people, if you ask them what is 5G, what is the Internet of Things, they have no idea. And probably most people here have no idea that actually Virginia just had a bill passed streamlining the deployment of these 5G cells. So there's legislation on the federal level and lobbying, enormous lobbying going on there. There's legislation on the state level in 17 different states, and unfortunately Virginia is one of these, and Virginia has actually passed them. California has, their legislation is out of the committee, and California being California, they're fighting in tooth and nail, but not successfully. It was voted unanimously out of the committee 2 days ago. Florida has a bill. Ohio, they snuck their bill in through something that had to do with pets, and they snuck it through. Nobody knew about it. So now in Ohio, they have 80 municipalities, municipal governments, filing a lawsuit. I haven't checked exactly what the particulars they're fighting it on, but that's currently going on in Ohio. As far as I know, in Virginia, I don't think anything's going on except for it's just being, passed through, went from committee to committee and, out to the floor, voted. I think the governor signed. Am I correct about that? I think so. I have the Virginia bill here, and it's not a pretty one. Then on the local level, these bills have to do with this. On the local, in 1996, there was a Telecommunications Act passed which strongly limited the rights of communities to oppose a cell tower in their community. One of the clauses in there states that a community cannot oppose a cell tower on the basis of environmental impact. That has been interpreted by courts to include health. So the telecom industry wants us to believe that we cannot even oppose these on the grounds of health. We cannot oppose them on environmental health impacts. That the environmental is written in the bill, health is not. But we've had trouble. Now, we have been able to oppose these on other grounds up until now. But with this streamlining, these bills coming in, virtually all local authority will be taken away, and there will be a one-size-fit-all for every community around the country. Whatever particular ordinances you have for historic, for aesthetics, for setback from a home or whatever, won't matter. The only thing that will matter is what's going on, what the legislation is. Now, lest state and federal legislation bump up against each other, the FCC's coming in to help out with that. And they're going to, they have extremely aggressive policies right now. They just formed a committee on April 21st. We had a rally outside of the FCC opposing 5G infrastructure. And on the 21st, they made announcements of a committee that's supposed to study how to ram these down our throats best. And on April 20th, they opened up comments for the public and anyone else on how best to streamline this deployment and get it rammed down our throats. Lest I forget to tell you, I looked through the Virginia bill this morning, and two things that are coming to my mind. One is that in the past, a lot of communities have gotten moratoriums on cell phone deployment. It's written in the bill you cannot have a moratorium on 5G and 4G, 5G, these small cells. There was one more thing. Oh yeah, I did notice the word safety was written in your bill. You can oppose these on the grounds of safety. Now, with the NTP study and literally thousands, 25,000 peer-reviewed studies, it may be that we eventually can morph into calling safety health. And this, I'm just speaking off the top of my head. Up till now, we haven't. Safety doesn't include health. It just means if you're fried. The industry is pitching this, the public is demanding it. The public is not demanding it. The public doesn't even know it's happening. And when they find out that it's happening, and it's happening for the Internet of Things, which, let me take a moment and pause and tell you what that is. Just out of curiosity, a show of hands, honestly, does anybody know what the Internet of Things is? Okay, so the Internet of Things is one of the main reasons the public is demanding this, and I think there was one person who knew other than us what the Internet of Things is. It's an initiative where every single thing that can possibly be connected to the Internet will be connected. Everything. Now, this goes from your refrigerator, to your toaster, to your coffee pot, to your baby's diapers, to your clothing, to rectal thermometers, to robots, to artificial intelligence, which we will increasingly be living with. Any others that you know off the top of your head? It's literally mattresses. They already have them, infidelity detection systems. What? What?
They'll do it with pens?
I haven't seen pens. Have you heard that?
No, I'm just...
No, yeah. I'm sure they'll find a way, but pens is one I have not read about.
So it will know what you write automatically.
That's smart.
Cars, the driverless cars, but going back just a moment to the Internet of Things, a lot of them I don't want to state here because I'm a little too modest too, but they're very, very, insane. Yeah, driverless cars is another thing that they're really pushing. Those are, I just read an article 2 days ago that they're really never going to be able to get the technology right on that because there's so many eventualities that they can't account for, and they have to, put in moral judgments and so forth. So what they've decided to do is make a smart lane on highways to avoid human errors. So we're going to have a smart lane, which is essentially like a train, or trolley cars, and with blankets and blankets of radiation. So that's what the Internet of Things is. I'm slightly sidetracking, but the Internet of Things is bad on so many accounts, and if you go to the website, whatis5g.info, you'll see them all delineated, and I'll just say them very quickly. One is health. Two is environmental impact, the loss, the impact of these millimeter wave frequencies frequencies are already impacting wildlife. The millimeter wave frequencies that just go skin deep on an insect, our bees, that's going to threaten our pollinators and so forth. So the impacts on the environment are going to be enormous. Cybersecurity risks. Right now, everything is connected to the internet. Up until now, a cyber attack, they got your personal identifying information, they shut your business down, your accounts down, or whatever, compromised credit card. But when everything is now into the physical world, essentially the world is becoming our internet. It's the Internet of Things. A cyber attack is going to have ramifications in the physical world and can shut down the electricity. It can stop driverless cars. It can do enormous, so you can do murder, not you, but people can be killed with cyber attacks. And this stuff is not, they're not able to keep the security up on this because it would be way too costly to invest in cybersecurity things, and they don't want to, they want to keep the manufacturing of this going. Privacy. When every single thing in our life is recording data and it's connected to the cloud, we are essentially fusing data as we go through our life, and this data is used, then is marketed, is aggregated, it's then fed back to us through marketing, it's fed to law enforcement, and it's fed to our government agencies. Cybersecurity, energy. The amount, have I ever gone over my time yet? The amount of energy to produce one microchip is astonishing, astronomical. So to produce, to run, and to dispose of the Internet of Things, all these things, is going to be a huge energy drain. And although industry pitches it as, we'll have all these ways of saving energy, it's highly questionable whether they will be able to offset their own carbon footprint from all this stuff. Not finally, but in terms of energy, wireless uses about 25 times more energy than wired connections, because if it's wired, it goes straight through a wire. If it's wireless, it's just like all that energy everywhere. So all this wireless connectivity is totally useless. There are many more reasons, but I'll just say them without going into them. E-waste, conflict minerals, effects on our brains and humanity, and all of these are dealt with in the website. Going back one more thing to fiber. Fiber optics is a safe technology. It's a sane technology. If all of us had fiber to the home, and from that fiber wired to our devices, to our laptops, to our whatever, that would be completely safe, not harmful for the environment, and if you really, really wanted, if we would reserve, if you had to have cell phones for a quick text, quick communication, I'll be there in 30 seconds, that kind of thing. And then when you were at your office or at your home, then you use the fiber station. You don't need to be walking around. But if you absolutely need to walk around, limit those communications to short, text messages or so forth. We would need 2G, 3G infrastructure to handle that. That's all. That's all. I'm not saying I want those. I personally don't have a cell phone, and I'm very happy I don't have a cell phone, but we certainly don't need to go to 5G. when we have a viable option of fiber, which is far safer, far faster, and far more cyber secure. So have I gone over yet?
Thank you. Thank you.
I have the Virginia bill here, if anybody wants to look at it. Do you want to see it right now
Yeah, I
or
do.
afterwards?
Right now it's like.
What's the bill number, Kate?
I'm sorry?
What's the bill number?
I don't know.
Are you not-
It
Does it say there?
835.
What was the bill number there?
835,
It's
but
a
it's fast,
chapter.
it's done.
835, Virginia. It doesn't mean can't be undone.
In court.
We've done that before. Right. Next, our third speaker is Daphne Takover. Is the founder and managing director of We Are the Evidence, an advocacy group for the protection of the rights of those injured by wireless radiation. Ms. Takover is a licensed attorney in New York State and Israel. She developed sensitivity to wireless radiation several years ago, and since then has committed her time to raising awareness about the effects of radiation, of wireless radiation. She has successfully fought in the courts of Israel for Wi-Fi to be removed from schools. She has been featured in documentaries and a New York Magazine article. Thank you. Welcome.
Hi everyone, I'm a little bit sick, so excuse me. I would start by correcting, we did fight the Wi-Fi in schools in court. We lost in court, but we were able to create change through that case court, and a lot of the PR that it has received, and as a result, in Israel now we have the strictest guidelines of Wi-Fi in the schools in the world, including Wi-Fi was banned after the age of 6. And grades 1 to 6, they limited the use of Wi-Fi to 1 hour a day more or less, and then the Wi-Fi has to be turned off at all other times. We also got the government official to admit harms, and we got the first city in the world, which is one of the most high-tech cities, Haifa, to announce that they're removing the Wi-Fi from the school and installing wired internet. It hasn't been going so fast, but progress is made slow, unfortunately. So, as Nancy said, I became electrosensitive a few years ago, and I became very sick by this technology, which I used to love very much. And I forced myself I removed myself from society, not out of choice, because I had to. And I ended up living outside of society for 4.5 years, trying to avoid this radiation at all costs because I had to. Fortunately, I've been getting better, and I've been trying to do this work and putting myself back in society in baby steps. So this week, I was in New York City, which for me was the second time since I became very sick by this radiation to go to New York City, and I was terrified, as you can imagine. Because the other 2 times I've been to New York City, I couldn't move for 2 months. I literally could not move for 2 months. So this time I was able to handle it a little bit better, and until I go to Times Square. Times Square, just like a lot of other big cities in the world like London, essentially in every pole you have a wireless transmitter. And the idea is as far as I know, is to have everyone's faces captured at all time in case there's some kind of event. They can, see your faces and know exactly what's going on. So every pole there is an antenna, and that's what I thought about. This is how 5G will be. Where on every pole we have an antenna. I got so sick there. I mean, I could not be there. The pain was so intense. I just felt this radiation all over. My body was struggling severely. I just ran out of this space. So this is what our 5G world is going to be. Now, this affects not only me and people who develop electrosensitivity, because electrosensitivity is not something that is like this, as the name falsely suggests, something that a small group of the population is having, like this small sensitive group of people whose body reactions may be abnormal and unlike the rest of the population. That is not the case. We are electric beings, and every person is affected by this radiation. Some may feel it faster than others. Some will become electrosensitive. I believe eventually almost everyone will. But others will get cancers and numerous types of cancers. fertility issues, cognitive problems, etc., etc. So we are all affected by it, not some small group of normal people in the population. So I just want to say something. Earlier, we've been told here that there's no proof of safety. I do not subscribe to this kind of line of talking because I said there's tons of proof of unsafety. There is a scientific evidence, which is a conclusive evidence, that this technology, all the microwave radiation technology, is extremely harmful to almost every system and every organ in the human body. And more than that, we use science to warn us of potential harms, but we passed that stage because right now we have conclusive evidence, which is the most important evidence, the human evidence. So there's not only no proof of safety, there's an absolute proof of this being unsafe to humans. Humans, animals, and the environment. And there's already an epidemic of sickness caused by this technology. That should have been enough to stop us and take a different route. Instead of limiting this radiation, finding ways to make it safer, we make it worse with 5G. And if we talk about epidemic of sickness, as I said, electrosensitivity, at least studies that were done up to 2006 show that at least 10% of the population already have symptoms. Now, we are in 2017. 2006 was before 3G, before 4G, before Wi-Fi, essentially before this exponential increase in the amounts of radiation in our environment and in our personal exposure. So the rates are likely very high, or much higher. We don't know because nobody checks, and we know why nobody checks. To add to this electrosensitivity epidemic, we have, again, the cancers, the infertility. There's a reduction between 25 to 40% of the sperm quality in the past 10 years. Cognitive problem with children, ADHD doubled, and there's a lot of evidence of correlation between this radiation, or those cognitive problem and ADHD, and other conditions that are associated with this radiation. So what is this 5G going to do to us? So they're going to put it everywhere. So if by this radiation being everywhere, but not so close to us, going to be now close to every one of us, near their homes, it's likely going to create higher rates of sickness. So if we're already in a kind of like epidemic kind of things, I think this is going to be a whole catastrophe. We already know that cancer rates around cell towers are 3 to 4 times higher. We know that there are a lot of studies that shows that there's correlation between the number of people who develop electrosensitivity and other neurological problems near cell towers. The closer you are to a cell tower, the more neurological problems there are. So if we're going to put this now antennas outside of every person's house or every second house, clearly we're going to have this rates of sickness going higher and faster. When it comes to 5G, it's also, as this video showed, we are going to use now a whole different group of frequencies. While wireless technology is using microwave frequencies in the range of 1 to 6 gigahertz, and when we say 1 to 6 gigahertz, we said between 1 billion hertz to 6 billion hertz. And to compare our house electricity, Europe and in the US, 50 hertz and 60 hertz, so like this is 50 and 60 hertz, we're talking about 1 billion and 6 billion hertz. 5G are going to use frequency between 20 gigahertz to 90 gigahertz. So this group of frequencies in the microwave range is called extremely high frequencies. So we use millimeter waves, they use the name millimeter waves because it sounds so innocent and nice. I like to use the word extremely high frequencies, and that should cause a lot of alarm to a lot of people. What does it mean, extremely high frequencies? I think it's bad news. And by the way, the industry has been using this cynically, so part of the slogans to make people calm down, just like they say, smart meters, smartphones. So it's extremely high frequencies means extremely fast internet. So you calm down, guys. This is all in your benefit. It's really good for you. Extremely high frequencies are really good for you. I don't think so. I think that anything that is artificially made is not good for us. And all of these frequencies, our body is not used to these frequencies. And we constantly introducing more and more frequencies into the environment that our body and our environment are not used to tolerate and cannot tolerate. And there are actually studies that show that our body cannot adjust to these frequencies, and definitely not in the amount of years that they expect us to adjust to these frequencies. So, as I said, we already have an epidemic scale problem, and we're going to cause it to be a catastrophe unless we take steps to stop this. So how can we stop this? That's a good question. I know that not doing anything doesn't stop anything. I know that everyone should take action. The industry is putting a lot of effort into forcing this on us, as Kate said, very fast, without us having any ability to take action. And when we wake up to understand that we need to take action, it's going to be too late. So education is really important. Every person should, educate other people. But I think that the real need for action is for people to get to talk to their elected official on all levels. And it's not by writing emails, and it's not by putting posts on Facebook. Those are really just to kind of like calm down our unconscious, yeah, I did something. But if you want to do something, you have to do something which is effective. Otherwise, it doesn't do anything. And you have to understand that your public officials are also people with families. And many times if you talk to them, considering the epidemic is out there, most likely these people already have sick people in their families, and all you have to do is help them connect the dots. And that happens to me all the time. I've just been in a conference this week, so I was able to talk to 15 people. Out of the 15 people, 3 are sick or someone close to them is sick. So a woman we spoke to, her brother has a brain tumor, salivary gland tumor, which has been associated conclusively with cell phone use. And her brother also feels cell phone antennas and feel Wi-Fi, i.e. he is electrosensitive. So that was one person. Then we talked to a very senior public official who, after we spoke to him, said, hey, my wife has all these issues and I've been suspecting that that's the Wi-Fi. The next day he brought his wife over, and guess what? She's electrosensitive. We went through the symptoms, the cause, and she's definitely suffering from the Wi-Fi in their house. And then we talked to another person and said, hey, all my friends are dying from brain tumors. Yes, all the friends dying from brain tumors, and most likely those associated with cell phone use. So talk to your public officials, convince them, show them the evidence, because the evidence is conclusive. Learn the evidence, show them the evidence, explain it. And then put the picture in their face and show them what this 5G antenna means. And tell them this is going to be on your home too. So when you're going to vote for this bill, this is what you're going to do to yourself and to your family. And there is no substitute for personal interaction. Those letters, they don't get to these public officials. You have to be there, you have to find them. If you need to go to every meeting they participate, wait for them outside the door, wait for them in a corridor and speak to them. Force them to speak to you. I cannot see any other way that it will work. I mean, Kate says very truthfully, the industry is pushing this forward very fast, very aggressively. However, we cannot give up. We have to believe that there is some common sense left out there, that those people who've been public officials went to be public officials to do good to society. So you have to remind them that. A lot of them forget it sometime along the way when they need to fund their campaigns and stuff. But you need to remind them why they were elected and who they owe their duty to. And that's not for the people who fund them. I want to add also a few things. I'm now going to add a few things to what's been said before. One of the reasons the industry is pushing this forward very fast, at least to my opinion, is the economic issue. This technology, the 5G, which they don't exactly know what it is, they just know what it's supposed to do, is very infrastructure intense. As the video showed, they will have to deploy a cell tower, essentially, almost every 2 to 10 houses. So if they need to put this infrastructure everywhere, that is going to be very costly. I personally cannot see how this is sustainable economically, but let's say it is. The only way they can do it is if they push it so fast, without any barrier, without any objection. And so this is the only way they can do it. So the only way to stop it is actually make it really, really hard for them. Make it not economical viable. So if we fight them in every level, if you fight them in their council, if you fight them when they're trying to pass these bills, you make it difficult for them, you make it more costly for them. And that has a chance to stop it, because this cannot be economically viable, especially not if they have objections along the way. One interesting point is, I think the video that we saw before was done by IEEE. IEEE is it's a professional organization of engineers. Ridiculously, the safety standards currently adopted by the US government, by the FCC, which is a spectrum auctioning agency, not a health agency. Nevertheless, they are the one to regulate health and safety on the issue of wireless radiation. They adopted the IEEE and ANSI guidelines on what should be safe. So how can it be that we're adopting guidelines of engineer organization who have no medical doctors on their team when they recommended those guidelines? And actually people do not know, but all the health agencies in the US objected those guidelines when they were adopted. They all said that those guidelines do not correspond to the current state of the science, which shows that there are biological effects, unlike what the FCC is claiming, and unlike what the IEEE is saying, that they have no medical doctors on the board, so they cannot make recommendations, health recommendations. Nevertheless, these guidelines were adopted, and the FCC said, oh, it was adopted in concert with the health agency of the US. On another point in IEEE, I think it was in March, there was a paper by a senior guy on the IEEE. His name is Frank Barnes. He's a professor at the University of Colorado. And a study that he did, which added to tens of thousands and about 10,000 studies, showed that this radiation is actually causing accelerated growth of cancer and causes Alzheimer. So people on the IEEE, studies done by people on the IEEE, show and proves harms. Nevertheless, we use the IEEE guidelines, which said there are no harms and no evidence of biological effect. Another point, Kate mentioned before that the FCC opened a docket for public comments. So those public comments, except for being there, have no meaning whatsoever. They're essentially useless. The FCC has been ignoring those public comments consistently. We have evidence that the FCC, when they started the rulemaking process of the guidelines that they adopted in 1996, they asked for the public comment. So when people contact them, they ask what they did with the public comments. They said, well, we transfer them to the health agencies because we're not a health agency. We cannot review those comments. We have no people to evaluate those comments. So because those people actually contacted the health agencies and asked them, have you ever received from the FCC the comments that were submitted on the dockets? And we have it in writing. They said, no, we haven't. The FCC never forwarded to us any of this information that was submitted on the dockets. So this is kind of like a fraud at every level of this. It's really mind-blowing when you know the evidence. We talked, there was some, the movie showed some evidence of the science. We have, again, we said there's no proof of safety. Once again, I will emphasize that there is 10,000 studies are kind of, for me, a conclusive evidence of harm, not of safety. And we also do not have allegedly proof of safety of the frequency used for 5G, but we definitely have a proof of unsafety. And I have here a document, which is from 1998, a paper published by the US Army and the US Air Force, with dozens and dozens of studies that were done on 5G frequencies. They didn't know about 5G then, on frequencies that now we're going to use for this 5G technology that nobody really needs, that show that these frequencies absolutely have biological effects, and not just biological effects that hit our skin and make us run away, but much more severe biological effects, including arrhythmia, heart rate variability, effects on the development of embryos, effects on antibiotic resistance, and other studies. So we have absolute proof that these frequencies are harmful and extremely harmful for any biological organisms. So to say there's no proof of safety, there's proof of unsafety, there's proof of harm, and we cannot continue with that technology. So I think we've been taking the wrong path for the past 30 years since we started using this technology. And the reason, actually there was enough proof that this technology is harmful before we ever commercialized cell phones. So when we put cell phones on the market in 1984, they were approved in 1973, but in 1984 they were commercialized because they had to build an infrastructure of antennas to support those cell phones. So when we commercialized cell phones in 1984, there were already more than sufficient evidence to actually get us not to do that. However, once cell phones were commercialized, the industry started really struggling. There's no evidence. So at the time, we had thousands of studies proving evidence. We are going through the same thing now. We have 5G coming out of the market, using new frequencies that we haven't been using before. So not only we already have sufficient evidence that microwave radiation is harmful to humans, now we go to a different group of microwave frequencies. And there is again more than sufficient evidence to make us not take that route, not use these frequencies for this technology. And again, we're going on the same route. The evidence is there, we're ignoring the evidence, said there's no evidence. And actually, to me, it's really weird when people on our side say, well, we know there's not enough evidence, we cannot go on something we didn't test. False, we tested. There are studies there that prove that this is harmful, and we should not and cannot go again this route. Last sentence I would say is, so what can we do? The thing is, there's enough evidence out there that shows that we can make this technology safer. Now, I'm not a big advocate of wireless technology, considering what I know. And if I knew before becoming sick what I know now, I would never have touched this technology. However, and I'm a realistic, so I know there's a problem. We are dependent on this technology to a large extent. We can make it safer. And the industry knows that we can make it safer. And actually, when the industry is funding studies nowadays, it's funding studies that were designed to go around the problem. And the main problem with this technology is what's called the modulation. It's how we put the data on the carrier waves, on the waves that carry the data. The industry knows that, and when they design studies, they remove the modulation from the study so there will not show health effects. So the industry knows where the problem is, the industry knows where the solution is, and the industry is ignoring and manipulating science to ignore the problem. So there are ways to make this technology safer. This is a time for us to take a whole different route. So instead of continuing with 5G, put that effort into finding and developing safer technology, finding a way to make this technology safer for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Don. I'd just like to add a couple of local points to that from Maryland. For instance, to illustrate this, our Montgomery County, Maryland bill that's being considered by our county council will change the minimum distance from a house and your bedroom from 60 feet to 30 feet, and the bill removes all public hearings, so it's all ability for the public to have any input in siting of the new towers. Also, to follow up, a website for those who are interested in seeing some of these thousands of studies is bioinitiative.org, and you can see the abstracts and the studies there. And also, to highlight one more point, the American Academy of Pediatrics has written the Federal Communications Commission and specifically said that United States safety standards right now on 4G do not protect children.
FCC knows that, they just want to ignore it.
So why are they pursuing 5G? And they have not reopened the federal safety standards in response to our children's doctor's plea to look at this based on these 10,000 studies. So now I'd like to just briefly review some of the steps that you can take personally right now to protect yourself somewhat from 5G. This is to make sure that, first of all, you protect yourself. You're an advocate, you're getting educated, and we need you fully active in the fight. And second of all, this will give you an idea of how active, it's amazing how active the grassroots community around the United States is. There are hundreds of thousands of people now educated on this issue and are taking steps to protect themselves. First of all, as you can see on the screen, your cell phone has 4 antennas and an iPad has 5. You can turn them off individually in the front screen. Turn off Bluetooth, location, and Wi-Fi, the ones that you're not using. This will reduce your exposure. You can use your speakerphone or text when using a cell phone. Limit the time you talk on the cell phone and purchase an air tube headset. This is a special headset that changes the electrical signal to the air vibration 6 inches away from your head to protect your brain, to use with your cell phone. Refrain from using the cell in a car, bus, train, or elevator. Those are all metal boxes, like microwave ovens. Metal reflects wireless radiation and it bounces around you when on a cell phone in this environment. Keep cell phones, laptops, and tablets off your body, especially off bodies of children. If you see someone, a friend whose child is using it, please just gently speak to them and say it's safer if it's on airplane mode. Use a protective sleeve for cell phones. Keep it on airplane mode as much as possible. You can just unplug your wireless router at night to save at least 8 hours of microwave exposure. Replace your home and office cordless phone. Get that good old corded phone back working again, and replace the Wi-Fi with a wired computer network. Don't use wireless baby monitors, and please speak to friends. The damage is to the fast dividing DNA of children and babies is particularly important. And then Center for Safer Wireless actually offers electromagnetic radiation assessments here in the District, Maryland, Virginia area. You can go to the website, centerforsaferwireless.us. And now we're going to move on to question and answers. So we will, so I'm sure that this is information that's certainly different from what you're hearing on the advertisements and all the public media. And there's a lot of information, so we welcome questions. Anything that has spurred your interest, yes?
Can you talk a little bit about how you had to, or what you had to do to help recover from the electromagnetic hypersensitivity syndrome? You mentioned it was about 4 years. Can you just briefly talk about what you had to go through to try to recover?
Yeah, well, I think the most important thing I did was, I can answer. Maybe before I answer, I would say that I do not think that electromagnetic sensitivity, and I actually prefer to call it microwave sickness, because it's a sickness being developed from exposure to microwave radiation, not general things. It's not a sensitivity, it's a sickness. I don't necessarily think that this is one sickness. And actually there was a study that was done by Professor Bill Palm in France, tested about 700 people who developed microwave sickness / electrosensitivity. And he showed that in each of them there were different problems that were found. For example, in 30% of them there was a leakage in the blood-brain barrier, but not in all of them. And there are sufficient studies to show that this radiation can break the blood-brain barrier. So whatever worked for me in general, not necessarily going to work for everyone. However, I do think that the most important thing I did would have helped everyone, and that's avoidance. I mean, I knew that I have to remove myself from this radiation. I knew that my body has no chance to recover as long as it's going to get exposed. It's like if you develop allergy to anything, you cannot recover by continuing being exposed to that something that poisons your body. So consider how sick I was. I knew I have to get out, and so I removed myself for 4.5 years. I lived in an isolated cabin in the wood, and I really did not get out except once every month to buy a little food, and even that was a nightmare. However, the problem is that this is becoming more and more impossible. So, because let's say when I moved there were not smart meters on houses. Now they put smart meters even in rural areas. When you move, and if they put the 5G, then they're definitely not going to be anywhere to go to. So that is really a challenge. How can you find nowadays an environment, a clean environment that you can remove yourself to so your body can try and get better? I know that for myself, I tried to find, I actually did not do all the treatments that everyone goes to and all those things, because my logic told me
I really do not know what got messed up in my body. There could be a bunch of things. So to try and go and treat it in different places and spend like tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars, like a lot of people I know did, is not going to solve the problem. I actually think that it might exaggerate and like make things worse. So that I did not do. So avoidance. I did try and find those things that were weak in my body. Then I tried to strengthen them. So I figured out my adrenal system, for example, in my case was not doing well. So I tried to strengthen the adrenal system. So I was really trying to address problems specifically rather than just try everything out there. I don't like to take tons of supplements, and when the doctor tried to put me on tons of them, I just couldn't do it. So again, try and find those things that you know that are weak in your body and address them gently. Because I think if you get sick by this and you're constantly in the environment with it, your body is still constantly under attack. So you have to be really gentle with yourself, I guess. And then like I said, for me, and this is advice to everyone who's getting sick, not being a victim for me is huge. So deciding to take action and do something about it when someone something that is destroy your life in the middle of your life, you can become a victim. Instead, just try and understand what's going on, try to do your best and fight back. I think that gives good energy to your body. So do something about it. For me, it works. I'm a fighter, so. That's the main thing. Another thing that I can say, there are numerous studies that show that there is, a lot of people suffer from sleep disturbances when they develop electrosensitivity. And the thing is, I know data from Israel on this, which is 40% of people in Israel cannot sleep now almost every night, and 10% of people cannot sleep every night. And that's the data of the government. There's a statistic agency. And I think that's the radiation. I mean, seriously, we all need to sleep. That's a basic human need. And if suddenly 40% of the population is struggling with sleep, there's a problem out there. So, and there are numerous studies that show that this radiation affects the melatonin production in our body. I never checked mine. But there's also studies, I don't know if you know, the 1996 study that shows, Henry Lay study, showed that this radiation actually breaks the DNA. There's other parts to that study that show that when they gave the mice melatonin before they were exposed, it actually prevented the DNA damage. So the first time I tried melatonin, I know a lot of people take melatonin. I didn't need melatonin. I slept really well when I was in the middle of the mountains and there's no radiation. I slept really good. But I know that when I had to go to Israel for the case and I had to fly and I was terrified, I did take melatonin. And I ended up with the flight kind of okay. So then I experimented with this a little bit. And so then I tried to see what happens if I take a little bit of melatonin after I'm exposed. And I would wake up in the morning and I felt as if I was not exposed, so my brain was much clearer. Then I tried the other way, like the study suggested, that I took it before I was, if I knew that I'm going to be exposed significantly, I would take a little bit before. So I don't know, I cannot pinpoint exactly what it is, but I can say that I'm constantly getting better. I do feel this radiation, but I can handle it. I still go into a room, I know exactly where the routers are. I know something is wrong. I was just in a hotel in New York, and we asked him tons of questions before where the routers are, how can I to find a room that I can maybe handle. And we got to the hotel really late at night, like 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt something is really wrong, Gary. There has to be a router. I had to sleep. I just disconnected everything. I didn't even look what was there. In the morning I woke up, guess what? There was a wireless router in my room. So I know exactly what's going on, but I can handle it better. So it's not that I'm not feeling it just like happened in Times Square. I couldn't be there. But I can handle it better, and that's important, is I can do this work and do something about it. Hope that answered.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd also point out that we have an area not too far from here in Washington called the National Quiet Zone in West Virginia. And some electromagnetic refugees basically are moving there, or have moved there, to try and find a life where they can be happy and healthy.
Yeah, that's in Green Bank, West Virginia.
Green Bank, West Virginia.
Yeah, but there's a lot of problems with Green Bank, West Virginia.
Oh, really?
I tried it. There are problems. First of all, they do have antennas there that are used for the...
Do you want to come back to the mic?
Yeah.
Let's start your answer first.
it's not that I'm trying to discourage people from going there. I can say from my own experience, it wasn't that great. First of all, they do have antennas that are used by the observatory itself. Actually, the second day I was there, I was all happy, blah, blah, blah. I was taking bike ride, and suddenly I had to drop my bike and hold my head, and felt very sick. I said, there are active antennas here. And the next morning I went to the observatory management and said, well, you have 3 antennas working here, and they're where they are. Because there's a lot of things that looks like antennas. She said, you're right. So there are antennas, they do use them from their own, they have like radio system that the workers use, so there are antennas going on there. Then they're all kind of experiment. Now they're not funded anymore by the federal government, and they need private money to continue and sustain the operation. So they're subscribing to all kind of experiments, some of them involving radars and stuff like that. So I've heard for a lot of people the things going on and they don't feel well there. I actually never felt well there. They also, when you're electrosensitive and then you start develop intolerance to other frequencies, like the low frequencies. For some reason, power lines, they were driving me crazy. The other issues is there are no houses there, really. And again, most people I know did not do so well there and left. So that's why there's not really a growing community, and there are good reasons for that. But if you're really, really sick and desperate to sleep, then it might be worthwhile trying. But the thing is, we should have places to escape to everywhere, and it's also not a solution. You cannot move 50% of the population into a quiet zone. You just have to make everything into a quiet zone.
But can I ask, how is this gonna, with 5G, I mean, where can you go? I would leave the United States.
You would not be able to, and that's a terrifying part. I think that...
Repeat the question.
Yeah, she asked, like, with 5G, how can we go anywhere? And that's exactly it. You would not have anywhere to go and to escape to. And I just try to constantly understand, I lived in a very isolated area. We had 2 cell tower, each was about 4 miles away from my house. And they couldn't put smart meters there because not a lot of people live there. So to put smart meters, you have to have a really intense, it's going to be so not cost effective. So I cannot imagine how they're going to do this with 5G, and how can it be cost effective? You have areas like that where you don't have people, and you have to put these towers on every, these antennas on every, I cannot see how it happened. And the ridiculousness of this, they actually use the rural area as an excuse to put this 5G, but it has nothing to do, they will never be able to put it in rural areas. And they say, oh, we need to bring internet to rural areas. That is not the solution. The solution is already there. The solution is the best way to bring internet to rural areas is to use the landlines that they already have and put ADSL modems on the landlines, on the phone lines. Instead, what the industry is doing, because the industry does not want to continue and support those landlines, because those are the same company, or our wireless companies are the companies that operate the landlines, like Verizon. They do not, the landlines are really expensive for them. Cell tower operation is much cheaper for them. So they want this landline out so they can stop support those landlines. So they tell a story that in order to bring internet to those areas, we need to remove we need to put cell towers, and we do not need the landlines anymore. While the landline is a solution to the internet problem in the rural area. That's the quickest, cheapest, best solution to bring internet to rural areas. But again, they want the fund available, and they want to push wireless, and they want to have they don't want us to have other options, so we'd be forced to use it. Yeah.
Well, so there are other countries other than the United States that aren't pushing 5G, so I guess those are options to move to other countries.
Russia.
Well,
I mean,
I don't know if there are countries really. I think once it be out, the thing is the US is trying to push it faster. And I don't know what's going to happen under this administration. I hope we'll be able to stop it, make this administration realize what a disaster we are creating. But I think that, this is like everything else. If it's going to happen here, it's going to happen everywhere. And industry is so strong and so forceful. The thing is, when I first realized about 5G, it was when the FCC announced 5G. And what we need to know is when the FCC announcing 5G, that means that it's already set, done deal, everything ready. I went to a conference, I think Peyton and Theodora participated as well. There were one of the owners of companies that create infrastructure said, We already have 100,000 contract for those 5G antennas to put in place. 100,000 contract in place when they just announced that 5G is going to happen. So it's all orchestrated, very well planned, leave us no ability to do anything. We always be behind. And someone before mentioned, that the FCC, how come the FCC is doing it? And the answer is very simple. The FCC is a captured agency. It's captured by the industry. There is a 2015 document written by Harvard Law School, the Department on Ethics. It says, capture agency, how the FCC is captured by those industry it's supposed to regulate. And the previous head of the FCC, Tom Wheeler, who is really wireless, was the head of the CTAA, which is Wireless Industry Lobby Organization, for 14 years. And then he became the head of the FCC, so surprise, surprise. And the current head of the FCC used to be Verizon attorney. So how this happened? This is how it happened.
So I have a question for you, actually.
I would just like to point out also the contributions from the industry to Congress. I think
AT&T donated this year $13 million.
I think Dennis Kucinich, who's a member of the House, said in his documentary, a documentary quoted him, a live interview, his saying $100 million. I think that's every 2 years election cycle donation. So clearly, since both of the major political parties accept political donations from the campaigns and from their PACs, this is really one of the key transmission belts. Mr. Wheeler was appointed directly by the last administration, President Obama, to head the FCC after serving as head of the industry, as president of the Consumer Telecommunications Industry of America, CTIA. He was the president for 14 years, and then he was brought in to be head of the FCC. So
the current sponsor of S19, which is the federal level, is Senator Thune, and he received the second most of any senator from the telecommunications industry for his campaign.
Surprise. So we have something to do there. So, okay, I think we had, next question? Okay, yes.
If you don't mind, I didn't understand one part. Can you expand on what you talked about modulation, about the industry taking modulation out?
Yes. Okay, sorry, speak a little too fast as usual. Okay, so you want to move your apartment, right? So you take your car and you load your car with your stuff. So it's the car that carry your stuff, right? But then you can arrange the stuff on your car in different ways. That would be the modulation. So when we use wireless technology, we want to transfer data. So we transfer the data on what's called a carrier wave.
I'm a telecom engineer. I'm just trying to understand
a
little more about.
So let me finish if those who do not. Okay, so you have the carrier wave. That would be the microwave wave, microwave frequency that we use to carry the information. But the way we put this on the wave will be the modulation. And for that we use different other frequencies, including low frequencies. So what they're doing it, let's say they want to test a cell phone, the harmful effects of cell phone. So cell phone use 900 megahertz. So they will use the frequency, the 900 megahertz, but they would not use the modulation which we put on it to transfer the data. So whether they test it on humans or on mice or whatever, they just use the carrier wave, the 900 megahertz. So when you do that, you get 50% and 50% of studies that will, 50% of the study will show harm, 50% of the studies will not show harm, more or less. But those studies were done by independent scientists, those who are not funded by industry and actually use the modulation, which is what we really need to do if you want to see if the cell phone is harmful. They do use the modulation with the carrier wave, and 100% of those studies show harm. And there is a paper, if you want, I can send it to you, that actually show that data.
Can I add something? In the National Toxicology Program.
Speak in the microphone for the recording. I'm just short.
In the National Toxicology Program study that was released in May of 2016, they looked at two different kinds of modulation, CDMA and GSM, and found a much higher, more important, higher significance in the CDMA group. There's also research which shows, because as you know, the newer cell phones have less power, but that the different modulation may have a stronger effect in terms of brain cancer. And there's an analysis done by Dr. Hardell and some other scientists. It's on the Environmental Health Trust page. It was presented at a conference in a poster presentation, but that's really speaks to the importance of the different characteristics of a wave, not just the frequency, because we talk a lot about frequency.
Intensity, it's more than intensity.
And power, it's about modulation. Just that's a great analogy, is how the car carries the information, because that information is moving into our body, pulsed.
And actually, it's what's more interesting. Actually, the agency that's supposed to regulate this topic health-wise is the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, and they have the authority under the law to regulate the health. They're supposed to have they're supposed to regulate health and safety, and it's a long story by itself. But the EPA for a while had a lab that was studying the effects of electromagnetic fields and microwave radiation, and it was their studies, and you can look up actually Blackman, who used to be one of the main scientists, and his papers on modulation are pretty clear as well. It's the problem is the modulation. Now, the Russians already in the 70s concluded that it's not only about the intensity of the radiation. We constantly focus on the intensity. The SAR standard used for cell phone are based on intensity, and that is really small part of the story. Yes, I do feel worse when there's something with stronger intensity near me. That's why I don't like the idea of small cell phone antenna near my house, and they're not small. But the intensity is very, very small part of it. The modulation is a big part, and there's another part that's being ignored, which is the interaction between the frequencies. And the Russian, again, identified that as a problem already in the 70s. So when we talk about 5G, we're not talking about only 5G. We forget to mention that we're also continuing with 3G, 4G, and adding 5G to the total radiation environment. So we have more in radiation in terms of intensity in the environment, and we have more frequencies, and we do not know how these frequencies are interacting. And I think it was really interesting that the IEEE movie that we saw before, that they saw all of these different things happening around. That's exactly what it is. There's so many frequencies going on in all directions, and we do not know how that together affect our body. And I would just assume it's very difficult to study, but I doubt that there are no effects to that.
Can I point out one more thing? When 2 decades ago, when the standards were first set, and we have a radio frequency interagency work group that was developed decades ago with scientists from the EPA, from the FDA, from various US federal agencies, and they wrote letters specifically with concern about the different modulations. How will these different modulations, this is not addressed in what we have as our standard, because our standard only looks at power density. And the other thing I wanted to just show you, which they're doing with 5G, which was this, I don't know if you've seen these virtual reality glasses, where you put your cell phone in here and connect it to a wireless network, and then you put it up to your face, and you can see in 3D, and it's probably magnificent in some ways, because you can be in places where you've never been. But this is, of course, putting microwave radiation and perhaps all these other frequencies right in front of our eyes, and in front of children's eyes. I know that they're bringing this into school systems. They've already done it in many school systems where this is considered a virtual field trip. And if you talk about 5G and you go online and read more, there are a lot of industry is talking about how to do this kind of technology, and it's outrageous. So, do you have any more questions?
All right, that's great. Any more questions?
Yeah.
Next one. Yes. Mm-hmm.
What is, I mean, it seems so enormous, this whole issue, and fighting it, and I understand that you said we can go down to our senator and talk to our senator, but this is like such a nationwide thing. It seems like state by state. I mean, there's gotta be is there a strategy for how we?
The question is, this is such a massive national program, and we do have the advice to go talk live, face to face, and force the information in front of our elected officials. But what is the strategy? Is there a strategy, large-scale strategy to defeat this and to keep us safe?
You want to answer?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have, I just wanted to say that I think that we as citizens can ask for accountability at a very local level and a national level, and I think that's a piece of the strategy. Maybe we're all engaged in different strategies, but I think that accountability is the most important thing. So if your child goes to school, or if you're in a community, in the library, is asking for a safe environment, because we deserve a safe environment. And it's not currently safe with all the transmitters we have now, and certainly 5G will add to that. So does anyone else want to talk about the various
I've been doing advocacy a long time on many issues, about 40 years, and came into this one and just said, oh my gosh, here's another one. Massive corporations bringing in technologies, both chemical, radiation, that are harmful to us and nice for the profit line of a few high-level executives. I've seen a real progress on this issue, first of all, over the past 4 years. There's really been a sea change in society from, I think, just 3 years ago. I have a little test where I do what I call an elevator test. I'm in the elevator with someone, and I bring up the topic, just super brief. I know I'm going to have about 10 to 15 seconds, and see what their reaction is. And it's hugely different now. Almost everybody now says, well, yeah, I heard there's a problem, and they listen, which is really nice. In my own office building, I'm on the 14th floor, and so by the time I'm coming down to leave the building in the evening or going up, particularly in the morning, I notice there's going to be 5 to 6 people in the elevator. An awful lot of them have their cell phones out. The new elevators are all metal sides, and so I'm now saying, would you mind just not texting or having a cell while I'm in the elevator? It's actually microwaves, and it's not good for us. And I haven't had a single person yet be upset. I was so surprised, and I was very leery about starting that, but I said, you know what, give it a try.
And actually, if the elevator test, I do the same thing. And interesting enough, I get a bunch of questions, and it happened to me not once or not twice, that suddenly everyone started asking questions, and they will continue. I'll get out of the elevator, and they continue and ask me. There'll be like a group of 8 people around me asking questions, happening to me again and again and again. People know, again, I believe it's also because a lot of the people already felt it. They felt tingling in their hand, they had pain in their head, so they already have those startup symptoms of electrosensitivity. So
we're also making progress in the children's area. And that's where I think this, getting people, if they can't admit that they might personally be vulnerable to this invisible thing, but the children, well, yes, we understand the children can be harmed. And so one of the key things to do is to work at the local school level. There's plenty of information to present to them, and start the pushback, start the rollback with the children.
This is more for you, who's knowledgeable in this. This is a short email from somebody who went to Palo Alto and measured the 4G small cells. And I'm just going to read it. I'm not a technical person. I know what I live with in my own house, but here he says. Now, remember, these are 4G small cells, not 5G. And it's before the huge amount of data. So we're just measuring the carrier wave. We metered these 19 antennas on Friday, 4/21/2017 for RF microwave radiation exposures, and the results are disastrous. 720,000 to 1,230,000 microwatts per square meter of exposure on the sidewalks underneath the towers. And then he makes 4 categories, and he says biologically based RF microwave exposure guidelines. No hazard is less than 0.1 microwatt per meter square. Slight hazard, 0.1 microwatt to 10 microwatts per meter squared. Severe hazard, 10 microwatts per meter squared to 1,000 microwatts per meter squared, and greater than 1,000 microwatts per meter squared is extreme hazard. And I'll say one more time, these figures were 720,000 to 1,230,000 microwatts per meter squared, 4G.
And with all that information, I still want to say that the strongest force on the planet is concerned, educated people. We've accomplished wonderful things in the past, and it's time for us to do it again. I would also say that one step we can all take is to support candidates for elected office that agree not to accept any funds from any corporations or PACs. Okay, now we've got another question.
Do we currently have any allies on Capitol Hill? Are there any congressmen or senators that actually understand this issue well, would you say?
The question is, do we have any allies on Capitol Hill? Do we have any representatives or senators that understand this issue?
We go there a lot.
Yeah, actually.
So I might spend some time there. I tested the ground. I wanted to see if that might be a good place to work at. So it was good in a sense that, as I always said, people are there not immune, and a lot of people in Congress are sick from this radiation. I mean, just by going to office, I found numerous people working there who have electrosensitivity, and we know already about we know congressmen who develop electrosensitivity. They have symptoms, and it was really funny. Like, I would tell them, I suffer from this. Immediately say, oh, what symptoms do you have? When someone asks me this way, I immediately know they have symptoms. Oh, what symptoms do you have? Then they ask me, and how can you be sure that that's from it? So that's for sure electrosensitive person. So we have people who are sick. Unfortunately, money is a very strong force, and we can see it there, which is pretty sad. Again, so they are Congress members who are sick. They have Congress members who have people in their family with brain tumors that they associate with cell phone. There are people who are working in their offices who are sick from this. So I do believe that you can awaken them. I think it's a process, and the money is an issue. They need to be reelected. If you're a House member and you need to go to re-elections every 2 years, you need someone to fund this. And it's very sad that for many of them, re-election becomes more important than what they are supposed to be re-elected for, which is represent the people and their interests. But that's how the system is built, and it's very unfortunate. I think we had one ally in Congress, that was Kucinich. Unfortunately, he's not there anymore, and he did try and pass a bill. With very, very little success. But I think that really what's missing there is lobbying on our part. Industry, is all over. AT&T spent this year $13 million lobbying in Congress. So if we're not there, we cannot really complain that nothing happens. So if we want something to happen, we have to be present. Complaining is not enough. People need, sorry to the word, move their ass and go to Congress and force their representatives to talk to them, whether in Congress or in their own states. And if they try to schedule a meeting and cannot get a meeting, then they need to wait outside the door of their congressman in their state until they talk to them. And again, unless people on our side will understand that they need to talk, speak up, and not by emails and phones and Facebook, but by actual action, I don't think anything will change in Congress.
One of the ways that industry is pitching this, as I mentioned before, is that the public is demanding it.
Right.
That we are demanding this. We want faster data. We want the Internet of Things. We want this. So after hearing that at the FCC, how they were going, last week, they were going to be so helpful to us by providing this to us, we went, Theodora and I and another gentleman went outside of the Supreme Court and took some random people and interviewed them and said, well, tell us, do you know what 5G is? You know what the Internet of Things are? Most of them, no idea. So we explained what it was, what these were, and, what are your thoughts? And for various reasons, many people said, oh, heck no, I don't want that. It's way too cumbersome, or I don't want my privacy, all this data spewing from me, or whatever it was. Everyone had a different reason. So all to say that we do have a video camera here. If anybody, you're not quite a random stranger because you just heard an hour and a half of a talk, but if you would be interested, we're assembling these into very short video clips, or into one video clip, which will be juxtaposed with industry insiders and our government elected representatives saying the public is demanding this. So if you would be interested in being interviewed, we would be very appreciative.
So we can do that as soon as we close up the program. But I did want to make sure that if there were any other questions, this is a lot of information, it's new thoughts. Yes?
Have any of you approached like the occupational medicine world or the ACGIH or any of the occupational organizations to make a case directly with grassroots effort for guidelines? Because currently NIOSH is aware of what exposure levels are, because I look at them, but they have made no health determination on it, and obviously it hasn't been updated since for a long time. So has there been any coordinated effort to approach, to come at it from like industrial hygiene as a public health issue, as an occupational risk, from that perspective?
So the question.
I haven't. Repeat the question. But the question is, has there been an effort to come at it in terms of occupational health issue? Yeah. And I would like to just add that NIOSH actually has, and we have it on our website. It is a precautionary ways to reduce EMF exposure that they have come out with. And there are 2 slide shows. One was presented to the Collaborative for Health and the Environment back in May 2016 when the NTP study came out, and also the National Toxicology Program also gave a talk. I don't know if you're familiar with the Collaborative for Environment and Health, where they have expert talks where people give presentations, the slides are put up, so we have those slides. And also, I actually found this the other day, a far more detailed slide about workers exposed to high electromagnetic fields and strategies, a precautionary approach. I mean, it says that, and that was from a worker at NIOSH. So I think that is really important, because the more people I speak to in their work, especially, we talk about in your office, have it be hardwired, but there are a lot of people who are not working in an office, and they are using wireless technologies all the time. And I think that's really important. Do you have any?
Yeah, I want to ask, may I ask why are you asking this? Why are you asking specifically on occupational issue or NIOSH?
I do environmental testing, and electromagnetics is part of what I offer, so.
But why did you think about NIOSH as a
just looking at what was considered healthy or what was considered public health by them, how did they determine it?
Well, there were some regulations that were done by the agencies before, and as I said, all the agencies, when the FCC was trying to come up with the regulation, they opened the rulemaking in 1993. And as I said, all the agencies actually objected the guidelines, and all of them already, as also Theodora mentioned before, mentioned the issue of modulations, for example, et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, they all kind of gave up on it. The most ridiculous thing I've seen is the FDA, which under the law is supposed to regulate cell phones. I mean, the way it's structured, it's the EPA is supposed to regulate the environmental exposure, so the level of radiation in the environment, and the FDA is supposed to regulate the devices, the personal devices. But if you go, and that's what the law says, if you go online to the FDA website, they'll tell you they do not have legal authority to regulate this issue, which is false. So they all kind of gave up. I don't know if they got scared off, because I know the EPA was scared off. Every time the EPA tried to regulate this issue, it's been put down. First time they tried to regulate it, all the funding were taken from its labs. The second time they tried to regulate it was 1993. There was a hearing in Congress on radar guns. A lot of police officers developed testicle cancer as a result of the radar guns. Radars use microwave radiation, just like microwave frequencies, just like cell phones and Wi-Fi. And there was a hearing in Congress, and Senator Lieberman asked, how come the EPA is not doing anything? The EPA is supposed to regulate this. So the EPA finally lifted its head again, tried to regulate it, and immediately the FCC took over. The EPA presented its potential guidelines to the FCC in the same month. The bill was submitted for the Telecommunication Act, which essentially tried to block this thing and give the power to the FCC. So it seems that the agencies are not really interested to do anything. They do not want to deal with this. They understand that it's a highly political issue, and they're just avoiding it like fire.
Well, can I add something else to that? There are a lot of documents, and we have them online as well, that show how the EPA, when they were first looking into setting proper safety standards, which we don't have safety standards, we have guidelines that we adopted, but they actually have letters where they discuss, okay, we're going to develop standards, we need to look at health, and then, as I understand it, actually an appropriations bill pulled the money from the EPA and actually made it illegal for them to work on. And I've been trying to sort of sort out exactly what happened there myself. I don't know, you're making eyes like you may know all the full details.
It's very, the evidence of fraud and all kind of things that's going on there, it's mind-blowing. It's literally fraud.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I would encourage everyone to contact their agencies and try to find out who is in charge in this and what are they doing, because we are citizens who expect that our health and safety is the #1 priority. And what I found with the EPA, I still, like every few months, I might write another email again. They send me around to different people, and then they don't have answers, or they say, oh, look, I need to send that to someone else, and that's not okay, right? Someone should be working on that. So,
can I just say one more thing? I don't need to say this out loud, but afterwards, if you want to come up, Montgomery County, their Coalition for Cell Towers is doing something with the workers, with photographing, so I think they have something going on right now with that, and I'll show you the email.
can I also add, I have a whole, like in terms of strategy and raising awareness at a personal level, which is of course not the final step here, but I have a lot of handouts, and please take some and take extra that you can hand out in your community about radio frequency and what people can do.
Great, okay.
Yeah.
Perhaps last question.
Yeah, have you, either of you, or any of you approached any of the candidates running for governor here in Virginia, i.e. Tom Perriello, Ralph Northam, and the Republican Ed Gillespie?
I'm in Maryland.
Maryland. Oh, no.
I'm not from any of the states.
I think that this is probably proportionally the most understaffed advocacy issue I've seen in terms of advocacy my entire life. But it's so overwhelming culturally that it's hard to get people to come out and start working on it.
Because people themselves are somewhat addicted, so they just don't want to know it.
Yeah.
And it's complicated. I don't feel good at explaining radiation, or it's not.
It is a technical issue, and those are hard.
But if there was some way to get, if people were educated enough to just bring people together, like the organization of how can you bring this to the masses?
Organize a group and I'll come and pitch you how to do this. It's really not that complicated. I think it's like math. There's some topics that people are really afraid to touch, but they're so much less complicated than they think.
Yeah.
So it's really one of those things. It looks big and all these words, and it's pretty not that complicated.
I think there is a sense that bringing together, we've had a lot of education nationwide. There's certainly a lot of women, a lot of mothers, doctors, pediatricians are very concerned. So pulling it together, and we will be continuing those discussions. And the Center for Safer Wireless, and each of our groups.
There is a sentence. I always whenever I'm afraid to do something, I tell this to myself. That everything you want is on the other side of fear. So if this is something you fear talking, so you have to address it. You cannot avoid it. So if that is what's blocking you from taking action, face your fear, find a way to learn it,
and learn it. It's not complicated.
It's not complicated that that the guidelines we have don't protect us. That's all we need to know. That's what I mean.
She's right.
And when I talk to people, especially other parents who might not have any math, and I didn't have any math in my background either, they say the same thing. This is, oh, it's radiation. What is radiation? What is electromagnetic? But you don't even need to know that. You just need to know that what we have happening has not, there is so much research showing adverse health effects, and actually, that's even getting too complicated. Let me just make it even simpler, is that the levels we have that we're allowing are not safe. They don't protect public health, and we need to ensure safety. I mean, they're not safe. We need to make them so that they are safe.
Can I disagree?
Oh. Okay, you disagree?
I disagree. I believe you cannot pitch this unless you understand what you're talking about. Because this is me. Because I don't say, I mean, I'm not a doctor, and I know the science, but I can definitely not discuss the science like a doctor can. I'm not an engineer in terms of microwave radiation, so I definitely cannot, explain it into that depth. But I know that I have to be able to answer questions. And for that, I do need to know the concept. I do need to know the science. But I can tell you from a lot of experience of pitching this topic that you can pretty simply convey this information. I know that every time I meet with someone, I convey those basic concepts in less than 5 minutes in a way they understand. And it doesn't take more than that. And so you can understand this concept, they're not complicated, and there is a way to learn how to pitch that. And but I do think it's necessary you know those concepts to be able to counter-argue anything they come up with. And actually I think that the most important point of education is your ability to answer the other side's question marks, because the industry have been putting a lot of misinformation out there, and they have all the access. Unlike us, when we're trying to talk and meet with our congressman, it's tough. They have open doors to wherever they want. So they've been able to say, whatever they want and put all kind of misinformation in people's head. So when you talk to those people, they have questions, and your ability to answer those questions will determine how much they're able to believe you. So yes, you need to learn it, but it's not as complicated.
But can I just add to that when I talk to people who I'm not in the elevator necessarily, but people know in their gut when I talk to people and say, I kind of think there might be something wrong with it, and I think that and then they don't want to take necessarily the next 5 steps, which are critically important, because I, of course, agree that we need to get educated so we can answer. I would love to be in a room with an industry executive and go to it. I mean, I'm like, right there, I'm like, well, let's have the panel, bring them on, bring it on. But what I'm saying is you don't have to know all that to take action. You can take action right now. And that's really important, and I think we have to also engage people in that way. So,
well, having a cheat sheet or something, like even that crystallizes it. Here are some main bullet points. Here's where the best place to find all of the articles that have the research. This is the best.
We all pretty. I mean, the people of us who actually take action, we're pretty overwhelmed. We are. I mean, I'm sick because I don't sleep for more. And so my suggestion to you, here, you think about, why won't you just decide that your first action as an activist now would be to organize an event in which you bring a person to teach a few other people who might be interested in doing something, bring one of us, we'll pitch it, and just organize something, we'll be happy to help. I mean, we help anyone who takes action.
I have a sheet out there too.
Yeah.
What parents need to know about wireless. It's the 2-pager.
There's Environmental Health Trust, if you want to write those down.
Actually, let me wrap up here with summarizing all that information.
Okay, but then also, I just wanted to say, after you do our websites, I am going to have on the website, from the angle of 5G and the Internet of Things, a cheat sheet. And this will have more of the, yours will be more of the science, and yours will be more of the electric sensitivity. So each one depending on the venue. Sorry.
So let me just review for those who would like to continue the education process, and I'm sure we all do. Theodora works with Environmental Health Trust and website.
Yeah, it's ehtrust.org.
ehtrust.org, ehtrust.org.
Oh, EHT, sorry.
EHT.org.
Well,
No,
trust has a T.
Yeah, but the website is eht.org.
No, it's EHTrust.
Really?
Yeah.
At EHT, oh, no,
Yeah, it's ehtrust.org.
sorry.
ehtrust.org.
It might be that goes there, I don't know.
And then Kate has put forward what is 5G.info. The 5 is a number, the number 5. So it's what is the number 5G.info. Daphne has we are the evidence. .org. And then this afternoon's panel has been sponsored by Center for Safer Wireless.us. And then also I'd mentioned earlier bioinitiative.org, which is the website devoted to hosting the actual 8,000 medical and scientific studies on this issue. So we thank you very much for your attention and interest this afternoon. For those of you who would like to take one of the first steps, which is empowering yourself to take charge of your own health, your own life, and your own family, we'll be offering some radiation protection products after the session. For those of you who would like to be recorded with speaking your own story and truth, we'll have the video available for short interviews. And we look forward to working with you. We look forward to seeing you in interviews. And any of these groups would be happy to provide speakers to PTAs, to any religious groups, to your community associations, and to any group of friends. We are we're basically all volunteers, and we are all simply counting on the interest and care of the American people to move forward and protect our society. Thank you.